Nathan and my wife Sophie met through a mutual friend. They got along well and started hanging out together a lot. Nathan never showed any threat to me, he always acted friendly and polite. But when you're involved with someone else's wife, it's only natural to err on the side of caution. They sneak dates while I'm at work or out of town, and as exciting as that is, they feel like something is still missing. When they told me about it later, I realized exactly what had happened. It was a December night when they decided to complete the missing piece of their puzzle. Sophie invited Nathan to come to our house after dinner to play cards. He arrived about 8 o'clock and was greeted warmly by Sophie. She hugged him, and I didn't think it was unusual at the time. After all, they were supposed to be friends. We sat on the couch and I went to the fridge to get a beer for Sophie. When I came back, Nathan and Sophie were sitting holding hands, her hand on his leg. "What's going on here?" I asked, as they looked as if they were about to deliver some terrible news. "My dear," she said, "we have something to tell you, but would like you to sit down first." I did as I was told and sat down. She went on to explain, "Nathan and I have been in a sexual relationship for the past 2 months. You see, there was a strong chemistry between us, a feeling that was stronger than both of us, and then things just happened. We care about each other." She explained, "I care about you too, and I don't want to betray you. So we have a proposition we want to tell you about." Nathan continued with Sophie's words, "You see, we couldn't stop seeing each other. The feeling was too strong to ignore. But we want you to be a part of this little arrangement we have. We'll continue to have sex, but you'll be there to watch and maybe do an occasional favor," he said with a smile. Sophie continues, "Actually, it's going to be fun for you. I checked your browsing history and I know you like to watch these kinds of movies." When I blushed, she rolled her eyes. "I see you constantly searching for something like this on your browser, so I know it's deep down exactly what you want. Honestly, it's better for our marriage." Nathan began again, "So all we need you to sign is a document, which is a statement that all parties to the contract agree to these terms." I quickly skimmed through the papers Sophie pulled out of her bag. Some of the terms indicate that if this agreement does not work out and I decide to start divorce proceedings, she and Nathan will be absolved of any legal liability. Some clauses allow various forms of physical contact, such as kissing, hugging, and even bathing and sleeping together. I sat there, my mouth dry, not knowing what to say. Sophie stood her ground. "Look, I love you, but I also love Nathan and everything he can give me. It's nothing personal, but what he made me feel is not something I can easily give up. I know he feels the same way about me." Nathan nodded in agreement. "So sign the contract, baby. From now on, that's all there is to it." "What do I do? I certainly don't want a divorce, but I have absolutely no idea how I would react to seeing Sophie with another man." I looked at the two of them again, their hands still interlocked but now resting on her thighs. Sophie looked at me seriously and said, "Maybe this will convince you to sign." I watched as she pulled Nathan's face towards her and started kissing him. He responded enthusiastically, placing a hand on her cheek. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My wife was making out with another man. I didn't want to admit it, but the longer they kissed, the more aroused I felt. I tried to duck and cover, but Nathan noticed first. "See, he likes it," he said excitedly. Just then, Sophie reached out to me. I looked at the contract and the pen in my hand and knew I couldn't hide that from them, and I wasn't sure it was right. But the truth is, I've studied quite a few of these cases, and that's because I'm working on a case. You see, I'm a private investigator, and in addition to owning a security firm, I handle divorce cases on a regular basis. Obviously, my research has not gone far enough. I switched to detective mode, which I bet they didn't see coming. I pulled out my miniature tape recorder and hit the record button. For the sake of clarity, I'd like to record our conversation to clear up any future disagreements that may arise. It's just for my own peace of mind. Do you understand? I notice there's a lot of legal jargon here, and I also notice that both of you have signed it and it's been notarized. "Yeah," Nathan said. "We're just trying to save time. We knew you'd agree. Our notary, Evelyn, will be here shortly and she will notarize your consent form, and then we can start enjoying ourselves." He was grinning like a kid who got a present for Christmas. "For the sake of clarity, how long have you two been cheating on me behind my back? I can't believe I didn't notice." Sophie said pointedly, well, we've been married for 4.5 years, and for 2.5 of those years, Nathan and I have been in a romantic relationship. Please don't use words like that to describe it. He's my soulmate and we've been deeply in love with each other all this time. Actually, now I'm getting a little carried away. Come on, Richard. Don't be so selfish. She has enough love for both of us. I looked at them and realized my marriage was over. I grabbed a pen, marked the paper and stood up. I hope this satisfies you. I show them my scrawled signature. Fuck you. Sophie looked at the contract and huffed. You asshole. She screamed. Listen, Nathan, I said, shaking the beer bottle in my hand and pressing my thumb against the top. I folded up the contract and stuffed it in my back pants pocket before aiming the bottle at my soon-to-be ex-wife and the dumbass who used to be my friend. The moment they released their thumbs, a stream of liquid sprayed directly into their faces. I turned around and grabbed my briefcase, laptop and jacket, ignoring their cries of "Get back here." And where are you going? As I opened the front door, I bumped into Evelyn, the notary. Your turn. You must be Richard. Oh God, you're absolutely right. I got into my pickup truck and backed up to the beginning of the driveway. I put it in forward gear, steered left, ran over the front lawn and rose bushes in front of the house, and purposely grazed the left rear side of the dumbass Lexus as I drove up the curb. I know I'm acting like a teenager, but at least let me get high. He's still alive. I drove to her parents' house. I decided to take the proactive approach. And as much as I love my in-laws, I don't want to be the bad guy. I kept getting texts and messages on my cell phone, and eventually the voicemail was full. And after a while the calls and texts finally stopped. I stopped the car in front of her parents' house, got out and rang the doorbell and soon heard, Okay, I'm coming. The porch light came on and I found myself facing her father, Judge Thomas Smith, who didn't look in a good mood. Richard, what are you doing here at this hour? Where's Sophie? I don't know where she is, damn it. Certainly not on this planet. My in-laws have always loved me, even though they have a son in addition to my soon-to-be ex-wife's daughter. I handed the contract to the judge and put my microcassette recorder on the kitchen table. What the fuck is this? Read it, I said. He looked up at me when he finished reading. There's no redeeming this, is there? What would you do in my place? His eyes lowered and he sighed. I understand, son. Just then, their old home phone rang. His wife picked up the phone. Hello. If Richard is there, I need to talk to him now. Her father grabbed the phone. What's going on, Sophie? Is something wrong with you too? A surprised squeal came from the other end of the line. Dad, what are you talking about? It's none of your business or Mom's. It's just between me and my husband. You guys need to see the contract that explains it all, or you've turned this into a family issue. I heard the cries and knew they already knew. Her father said into the phone, Goodbye, Sophie. Then hung up. He turned to me and said, Go take a break and do what you need to do. Just don't do anything stupid. Understood, sir. I'm sorry. Everything is my fault. It's not your fault, kid. Sometimes snakes just crawl into the garden. I left and drove to the Hampton Inn and booked a room for the week. I started eliminating the drinks from the mini bar and then threw up all over the bathroom. I dragged my soaked clothes into the shower and rinsed off with the shower head. After stripping off my clothes, I collapsed onto my bed and fell into sleep. This has finally come to an end for the time being, and I know that tomorrow will be a new beginning, and I need to continue my program. The next morning I sobered up and got myself back together. I then realized that I had no clean clothes to change into, so I called another good friend, Henry, the one who wasn't sleeping with my wife, and asked him to buy some new clothes and bring them to room 819. He was worried about what had happened, and I told him I would explain when he arrived. Oh yeah, and bring a couple of egg sandwiches and enough coffee on the way. Come on, man. I then contacted my office and instructed 2 of my best men to begin surveillance on Nathan and Sophie. I called my bank and froze all my personal and business accounts. After all payments were made, I canceled all of our joint credit cards. Next, I called to cancel her cell phone service, part of my company's business plan, and then called to cut off all utilities to our house. I called a lawyer friend and she recommended a divorce attorney. My brother is really good, so if you want to maximize the damage, tell him I referred him. Obviously this will be a solid win and could be a landmark decision. I called her brother, and about that time Henry arrived. I changed my clothes and we had breakfast together. I briefed him on what happened yesterday while telling my future attorney what happened and what I wanted. He asked me to come to his office at 3 p.m. with all the necessary papers. We strategized there. Henry couldn't believe his ears. I can't believe she could do something like this, not only cheat but present a written contract and have it notarized. It's crazy. That's true. I need to do a few more things, so I'll contact you later with the details. No problem, man. I've never fully trusted Sophie and now I know why. If you need any help at all, Amanda and I are always here. Amanda is his wife of 10 years and has always treated me like a brother. After he left, I looked at myself in the mirror. I look awful but better than yesterday. Then I headed out the door to the bank. I was immediately taken to the senior vice president's office. I'm not a billionaire, but my personal and business accounts add up to a sizable amount. He gushed at me. I don't understand your behavior. Sure, it's your money and you can do what you want with it, but is there anything we can do to change your mind? Guess where Nathan works? He is a senior financial advisor to the bank. So I put the contract on the vice president's desk and turned on the tape recorder. His eyes grew somber as he read the contents of the contract, but his face went from pink to pale as he realized what he was reading and listening to. This has to be some kind of joke, right? If this is a joke, I can't laugh. I can't continue to do business with an organization that employs assholes who cheat on me with my wife behind my back. My voice rose into a low growl, and I was sure the staff around me heard every word. I took the roundabout and the tape recorder from his trembling hands. I'm really curious how many other clients are treated the same way. Please notify Nathan Samuels that he will be receiving legal documents shortly. Have a good day, sir. I turned to leave, and as I passed his office I heard him yell, "Get Samuels here immediately." I laughed softly. I stopped at the stationery store and printed 3 copies of the contract. I thought it best not to show the original to anyone until it was in the hands of my attorney. Then I visited my insurance agent. Guess whose future ex-wife works there? I was taken to the office of the owner, Rachel Williams. As I walked through the office I thought I heard someone whisper, "Richard, this is great." I'm laughing. Rachel stood up and shook my hand. "Richard, nice to meet you. What can we do for you?" She looked nervous and clearly out of it. "I think you know why I'm here, Rachel. I'm going to cancel all my insurance immediately and want a refund check now. I can't do business with a company that employs people who lie and cheat." "Wait a minute, Richard. Your personal feelings can't affect my company's business operations. I didn't see or hear any." I threw a copy of the contract on her desk and stared at her. "Do you need to hear the recording?" She quickly skimmed through the 3 pages, briefly looking at the notary stamps and signatures. A slight tremor appeared in her upper body. "One moment, please." She pressed the intercom button. "Sophie, please come to my office immediately." Seconds later, my visibly shaken future ex-wife walked into the office. "Yes, Ms. Williams." "Sophie, you're fired. Clear your desk and leave immediately." Sophie stumbles a bit, then passes out. Several people gathered around and busied themselves with her. Rachel stood up and asked if I still insisted on canceling the business. I stood up and shook her hand. It was an honor to deal with an ethical professional. I think I can continue to keep my business here. I turned away, stepped over my ex-wife, who was lying on the floor, and headed for the lawyer's office. My attorney's name is Marcus Anderson, and he's a little older than me but looks younger. He's shrewd. He invited me into his office and asked if I needed anything to drink, then asked his secretary to bring us some water. "Well, Richard, I spoke to my sister and she seems to think I'll like the case. So what do you have to show me?" I prepare the original contract and turn on the recorder. After the recording, he listened to it but seemed more interested in the contract. When it was all over, he pressed the intercom button. His paralegal secretary came in. "Linda, make 2 copies of this recording and put the original in Mr. Daniels' safe. Play a new tape for the recorder and return it." He continued to read, occasionally squinting at me. Finally he put down the contract and looked at me. It's true, isn't it? No one could make this stuff up. He paused, then looked at me again. Okay, so what do you want to do? I will crucify them. I'm going to make them so miserable that they can't work and live a public life together. I want them to pay dearly. He gave a slight smile. I've never seen a case like this in my life. I wouldn't pass up the chance to work on this case even if I was given all the money in the world. First, we're going to bring in a notary public for questioning. I've worked with her before and I think she'll cooperate. We'll have our own notary come in and everything will be done by the book. Then we have to verify the authenticity of the recording and put it to good use. We'll push for a jury trial and nail them. Oh, I said I think they've all lost their jobs. I'm making waves at the bank and at her workplace. Great, we'll just keep the pressure on. If we can get a jury trial, I'll treat this as a public interest case. I've come to like this case. The point is that they have no grounds for libel or slander. We have proof that everything they say is true. As long as we stick to the facts, they can't do or say a damn thing. That's when it hit me, they dug their own graves. We brought in a notary public and when it was all laid out before her, she lashed out at them. She confirms that they also want the best of both worlds. Marcus set up a meeting with the judge to present our case. The judge shook his head and looked at me. Mr. Daniels, you have my sympathy. I'll do what I can to make things right if I can. But are you sure you want the jury to hear this? My attorney interjected, Your Honor, my client wants to inflict maximum pain and suffering on the woman who is still in fact his wife and her lover. He asked for an annulment and for her to be left with nothing, absolutely nothing. Well, counselor, prepare the materials and let's see if the other two parties agree. We notified the other two and told them to either sign or hire an attorney. They made a big fuss about how they were almost broke because the utilities were cut off and they were out of work again. But she refused to sign and he was expecting a handsome settlement. Eventually, they hired a suspicious-looking man to represent them. They did not mention the contract or the recording to her attorney. We set up a meeting at my attorney's office to clear everything up. My attorney checked the timing of the recording and the authenticity of the voice, and we were ready to go. They arrived at 11 a.m. Her father accompanied them, which surprised and worried me a bit. I shouldn't have. Sophie approached me as if to hug me. I pushed her gesture away and looked at my ex-best friend with derision. She started to say that it was all a huge misunderstanding and that I had gotten them into a world of trouble. They have all lost their jobs, are nearly bankrupt and have no hope for the future. I formally dropped the claim and gave her the house. But without the money they were soon in trouble. They tried to sell the house but luck was not on their side. She wants me back in her life, in her bed and most importantly in her bank account. My attorney responded, Are you still dating Mr. Samuels? Her attorney said it was irrelevant to the discussion. They're just friends. Upon hearing these words, my attorney pulled the contract out of the pile of papers and placed it in front of this guy. Let's do it all over again. He stands in front of Sophie while her lawyer reads the papers. Are you still dating Mr. Samuels? She was so pale she almost fainted. I don't think I'll answer that. It's too personal. That's okay, Ms. Frell. You can answer that question in court when you testify under oath. I grew complacent, watching their lives fall apart. Her lawyer reads the contract and looks like he's about to throw up. You guys never mentioned this before. He exclaimed. He turned to my lawyer. These are rumors. You have no real proof. At this point, my attorney produced an affidavit from Evelyn Schultz, a notary public. He gave it to the attorney along with my detailed statement, signed and notarized, which documented what was said and what was asked for. Then he pulled out the recording. It's admissible in court because your client knew what was going on and voluntarily agreed to it. My people press play and their whole world falls apart. Her lawyer looks panicked. Just then her father, the judge, spoke up and settled everything. He slammed the table hard and glared menacingly at her lawyer. Enough. Sophie, Mr. Johnson, you're fired. Sophie, sign the damn blank papers and stop being stupid. Samuels, you are named as a defendant in the divorce proceedings, and it would be wise to get legal representation before Richard sues you. Sophie, I realize you're not getting anything out of this. I think if you go to court you'll get less. Your mother and I are disgusted with you and your behavior. Your brother refuses to bring his wife and child to our house as long as you're there, so you better start looking for another place to live. Samuels is your soulmate, and you chose him over your husband, so maybe things will work out for both of you. I heard him whisper, I sincerely hope not. Turns out Sophie's parents have been paying for her legal representation, so she signs all the papers while Samuels jumps up and storms out of the room. He disappeared from the face of the earth. Ahem, I have nothing to do with this at all. 3 months later I'm the only one sleeping in my bed and I'm a lonely man. Well, that was last night. The Wilson sisters promised to cheer me up tonight, all day tonight and tomorrow. Life is good. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.